In this video, we're going to take our edited podcast episode and release it out to the world. Remember that podcasts are primarily distributed through an RSS feed. But how do you get your audio and video into that RSS feed? Well, that's where your media host comes into play. For publishing our episode, we will tackle the following topics: uploading your audio file, episode title best practices, defining good show notes, episode artwork specs, episode metadata, and release options. Our first step will be to upload our edited audio file. Remember that our audio file should be an MP3 file at 44.1 kHz sample rate, 128 or 96 CBR, and 16-bit. In our media host, let's go up to New and click on Episode. This will bring up our new episode page. To upload our audio file, click on the New Media File section and select your audio file. Once our file has been fully uploaded to our media host, it's time to create the perfect episode title. So here are some do's and don'ts on creating the perfect episode title. Keep it brief and to the point. Your title should communicate to your audience exactly what your episode is about in a very brief single sentence. Also, keep in mind that some podcast apps do have character limits when displaying titles, so there's no need for overly wordy titles. Be topical. Titles and descriptions are two of the major sources of SEO within podcast apps and directories. Adding keywords into your title that you think your audience may be searching for is a strategy that can help with discovery. Be intriguing. Consider a title that may elicit some kind of curiosity in your audience. For example, a title like The Batman Movie Review is definitely topical, but aside from just knowing that the podcast episode is a review of the Batman movie, it doesn't give us any reason to click on it besides interest in the topic. But a title like The One Reason Why the Batman Movie Was a Hit, that gets the audience to ask, well, what could that reason be? And it compels them to click and listen. And if you have multiple titles and you're wondering, which one should I use? Which one makes you want to click on it more? The one that makes people click is the one you want to use. Now, what are some of the things you should definitely avoid in your titles? Don't keyword stuff. What's keyword stuffing? It's the tactic of adding keywords into a title or a description that are without context or really don't need to be part of that sentence. This takes advantage of SEO, but it's highly frowned upon by podcast apps, and it can even result in your podcast being removed from certain apps, including Apple Podcasts. Don't include your podcast name either fully or as an acronym. There's really no need to include your podcast title, whether it's abbreviated or not. It should be unique to what the content is about. One other thing to keep in mind, any place you can see the title of the episode, the title of the show is usually about a half an inch away, so it's really not needed. Don't try to be way too clever. Just like the show title, don't try to be too clever with the inside jokes or titles that the public at large, they're not going to understand as representing the content of your episode. A note on episode numbers. Episode numbers are encouraged. However, some apps like Apple Podcast app, the number one app, they really don't want episode numbers in your episode title. However, there's a solution for this right inside of Libsyn. Scroll down to the episode title and add in your episode number to your main title. However, you'll see that there is a second title field called Apple Podcast Title. Here, you can remove the episode number from the title to optimize it specifically for Apple Podcasts. After our title, the next thing we need to tackle is your episode show notes. But what are episode show notes and what do we put in them? Show notes provide textual context to your episode. Think of them like a blog post for your podcast episode. There is no right or wrong way to create show notes, as your individual show may have completely different needs when compared to another podcast. But here are some common elements that you can include in your show notes. A summary of the podcast episode, time-coded chapters aligned to the topics in your episode, links to websites, blogs, or anything that may be referenced during the episode, any credits or attribution to third parties that helped in the production of the podcast, for example, theme music for the podcast if you didn't create it. Any calls to action, social media links, website links, membership links. Just like our episode title, our show notes can help us be found in search. So be sure to use your keywords and think of the way that your listener is going to be searching. What are they searching for? Put those keywords in your show notes to really have it optimized so that you'll be found. Aside from our episode title and our show notes, we want to make sure to fill out all the necessary metadata that's associated with our episode. In our new episode page, you'll find a few more details about your episode. Let's talk about each of these fields. At the top, you'll see fields for your episode type, season number, and episode number. You can change the episode type to full, bonus, or trailer. Full episodes are the normal episodes of your podcast. Bonus episodes could be off-week or shorter episodes that are outside your normal programming. And trailers are short promotional audio clips that could either promote your podcast as a whole or a specific upcoming episode. The season field can change if you organize your show into seasons. If you run an episodic show, you would want to keep this to season 1. Further down, we can see fields for our Apple Podcast title, explicit, and author field. As mentioned before, use the Apple Podcast title field to optimize your episode title specifically for the needs of Apple Podcast. The explicit dropdown allows you to choose whether your content is considered explicit or clean. Note that certain countries and territories do hinder the discoverability and availability of explicit podcasts. Finally, the author field is where you would put the names of you, your co-hosts, and any guest that may be on your specific podcast episode. The author field is another area that does come up in search results, so make sure to fill out the author field. The last set of fields include tags, category, and permalink points to. Tags are a field where you can put in relevant keywords. These tags will surface only in episodes published out to YouTube, as they are not used by most podcast apps and directories. The category field is an optional field if you choose to organize your Libsyn podcast page or player. The permalink points to field is where you can specify where you want the permanent post link for the episode to point to. By default, this link points to the blog page set up by Libsyn. However, you can customize this link to point to your own website or some other blog post. So if the goal of the podcast is to drive traffic to your website, be sure to update the permalink points to field to where people can find that episode on your website. We can also specify specific episode artwork for our episode. More and more podcast apps and directories are taking advantage of episode artwork as an additional way to draw an interest and help break your podcast out from the pack. Just like with our show artwork, here are some specs to keep in mind when designing episode artwork. It needs to be absolutely square, and this can be anywhere from 1400 by 1400 pixels all the way up to 3000 by 3000 pixels. The file size should be under 500 kilobytes, the DPI is 72, and keep text away from the bottom 15% of the artwork. Widescreen episode art will go out to YouTube and some social destinations. That artwork should be 1920 by 1080, also under 500 kilobytes and 72 dots per inch. The last section of the new episode page is to choose when we want to publish our podcast episode. Under availability, we can choose to publish immediately or schedule the episode for a later date and time. If you choose to schedule an episode in the future, be sure to set the media availability to based on release schedule. You also have the ability to save the new episode as a draft. Once we're ready, we can hit the publish button to distribute our episode out to the world. So let's take a minute to review what we've learned. Your episode title, show notes, and author fields all can aid in SEO for your episode, which can, in turn, help your podcast be discovered through search. Aim for titles that are topical and provide a sense of intrigue to the potential listener. Your show notes can vary, but generally provide the details about your episode in a blog post type of form. Episode artwork can provide another way for your episodes to stand out to potential listeners. With our podcast episode now published, Let's take a look at some of the various ways that we can get the word out about our podcast to our potential audience.